A lot of you tell us how much you want to hear more about what the actors and entertainers are doing today, who we all idolized and loved back in the days when adulthood was still new and we were trying to get everything figured out. Hi everyone, I'm Andy Asher. I'm editor over here at Bloomer Boomer, and I enjoy it as much as you, and we are lucky enough to have as our guest today, Tina Sloan. Soap opera Guiding Light ended its 72-year run on radio and TV, and for 26 of those years, Tina played Nurse Lillian Raines. Tina, it is fun having a chance to talk to you and learn about what you've been up to and about your books. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, thank you. What a great introduction. Thank you.
And what was it like juggling a busy schedule, taping your shows, and raising a family?
Well, it was fun. I mean, it really was fun. We had a lot of energy, or one had a lot of energy in those days. And it was like having two families too, because the soap opera family, you had my daughter Beth, was like a daughter to me. I saw her more than I saw my own son because I was there all day with her as opposed to home with my child. But I didn't have problems with it. Maybe it is that I had so much energy. I'd come home from work, play with him for a while. Then my husband and I, in typical New York City fashion, would go out every night during the week. We never went out on weekends. We stayed home on weekends. But that was sort of the way you did it in New York. And I don't know, I also would take a nap every day. That was my secret. I used to go in my dressing room, close the door, and I think people thought I was learning my script. But I'd lie down we had these big chairs you could push out and be comfortable in. And I'd lie down in that chair. I've taken a nap since college every day.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that, the short 5-10 minute nap.
Well, mine was more like a half an hour. As a matter of fact, today,
Yeah.
I had just taken a nap when we started. That was my problem.
Yeah. Well, in the last year, I've learned a lot. And I listen to podcasts, and this one is the one by Alec Baldwin and his podcast, and he talks a lot about his acting jobs on soap operas, and it sounded grueling at times, cranking out new shows. That sounds like it was a real job at times.
Oh, I think it was. I think it was very much, things were always happening and changing, and you got all your scripts on Sunday. And I learned for the whole week on Sunday. Some people learned it the night before, but as I said, I liked going out at night. So I learned them all on Sunday for the week. And, sometimes it was 70 pages. Sometimes it was just 3 pages. I'd say, where's Beth? Where's Beth? Where's Beth? But some days it was really difficult, emotional things you had to be dealing with. But I think doing that makes your life much easier. Do you want me to give you an example? I did a movie called Chasing Lanes with Ben Affleck and Sidney Pollack and Amanda Peet. And I was Ben Affleck's mother-in-law, Sidney Pollack's wife, and Amanda Peet's mother.
Great cast.
And the movie was terrific.
Yeah.
And it was done after 9/11, and it had a different ending. So they changed the ending, and I was cast to sort of be this woman who just was sort of ditzy. So we were all at dinner.
Did it change the ending as a result of 9/11?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard things like that happening. Okay.
A very bad ending, a very black, dark ending, and they changed it to a very positive ending, extremely positive. Matter of fact, I did another movie then with Al Pacino, which was supposed to be in the World Trade Center, and that whole movie didn't come out for about 3 more years because they had to change so many things in it. But this movie, because of my soap training, I could go into a monologue. Before they said 5, 4, 3, 2, they'd be talking, Ben Affleck and Sidney Pollack, about who had the bigger plane or something. Wonderfully interesting. But, I had to sort of not think about what they were doing and stay in what I was about to do, because I was going to do a monologue, and then they were going to do it from Ben's point of view, from Sidney Pollack's point of view, from Amanda's point of view, close up of me. So I had to do it maybe 8 times. And if I hadn't had that soap training where you could be emotional right on cue and not bothered by what else was going on around you. I mean, on the set, somebody could have walked in the closet by mistake, but you couldn't say, you're in the closet. You had to say, oh, he left me,
I love hearing the backstory of what went on during a production and a shoot, and a lot of that curtain, is coming down, and I find it fascinating to learn about that.
Oh, you mean that someone walked into a closet by mistake?
Well, the curtain of mystery behind how movies were made.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm giving you two really interesting things.
Exactly.
And I was in Post with Meryl Streep recently, and did you happen to see that movie?
No, I didn't. I will catch it. I love both of you guys, so I'm going to do it.
No, they cut. I was going to be. They had Truman Capote's black and white ball at the Plaza, and it was so elegant. They had all the costumes matching the real black and white ball. They had the music. They rented the Plaza.
Oh, beautiful.
It was about a 3 or 4 day shoot, and it was elegant. It was to introduce Meryl Streep's character, Katharine Graham, to New York society.
Okay. Oh, sure. I know it. Yeah, of course. I may have seen that. Yes.
Well, they cut that entire beautiful scene out. I was one of, the women in New York who she was being introduced to, and were a little bit haughty about her. But it was so intriguing. I mean, it was a beautiful, beautiful scene, but it was too upscale is the only word I can think of for the movie. I mean, Spielberg was directing it, so, he knew what he was doing, and Tom Hanks was in it. And I remember when I heard what the whole movie was about, I thought, how's this scene going to fit in with this movie? And it didn't. A friend of mine went to the opening in LA, and I said, I bet you they cut the scene at the Plaza. And he said, they did.
Well, you obviously have good instincts, and I guess that's what it takes. So now let me I'd love to talk to you about this for the whole time, but let me get into a couple of other things. So your family now, they're all grown and on their own.
I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old grandchild, so I get to play grandmother to them, and I love that.
That is so fun. It really is. What's it been like now since those crazy busy days before and the empty nest today?
When Guiding Light went off, I wrote a play called Changing Shoes, going from sexy high heels to black flats. And it went all over America. Oh, it was a one-woman show with me in it. And I remember Barbara and George Bush were in the front row when I did it in Houston. So that took a year or two for me. And then I wrote the book Changing Shoes at about the same time. And that brought me a lot of energy and being on TV, talking about it. And then I did Venice, the series that Crystal Chappelle wrote, and who was on Guiding Light with me. And I've been in Beacon Hill, the series, and I did movies like Black Swan, I did The Post. So I keep doing that. And then I wrote this book that just came out. That took me about 3 years. I wrote it, rewrote it, edited it, re-edited it. But every single person who's reading it, and I'm not bragging because, I think it's sheer luck, although it's also 3 years of work, but everyone says they read it in 2 days. They cannot put it down. It takes 2 or 3 chapters to get into, and then you can't stop reading it. And men are telling me this. I had a party last night, a Valentine's party for 200 people. And my husband played James Bond, and I played Cleopatra of Chasing Cleopatra. I played her mother, really, who's older. But everyone there, men came up to me and said, I couldn't believe how hooked I was, because it had not only romance and all of that, but it also had, my son had been in intelligence in Iraq, in the Marines. He'd gone to Harvard, and 9/11 happened. We lived in New York. He lost friends. We lost friends. He entered the Marines, became an intelligence officer. So he knew a lot of black ops and a lot of covert people. And he himself was involved with all of this, with Al-Qaeda. So I have a character in there who's a terrorist, an Al-Qaeda terrorist. And the book takes place in Hawaii. But the men, I think, loved all that they learned about covert terrorism and about the CIA. There's a CIA character who's one of the heroes of the book. But you don't know who the terrorist is until the very end of the book. And people said they literally stayed up all night reading it. So the 3 years I put in to make that an exciting book. And that's what I've been doing the last 3 years.
I love the way you brought in the attractive story for the male reader, and then for the love and everything for the women
reader.
You got everybody there.
You have the female reader. There's a heroine who's 24, a heroine named Cleopatra who's 46.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right in the beginning, has a little car accident and with the 26-year-old Jake, who's about to get engaged to Julia, the 24-year-old, and has a wondrous affair. One friend of mine called me and said, "It took you to page 9 to get into the sex, Tina. Could you have done it any faster?"
Let me ask you this: how much of your story comes right off the studio stage when you were shooting your shows?
Well, I mean, obviously, there was always love and sex and betrayal. In this case, the betrayal is of her, but there is a lot of other betrayal, and it's going to stun you. I mean, the surprises in this book are the cliffhangers. Every page at ending of each chapter, which are small, short chapters, are cliffhangers. That's certainly a soap opera, isn't it? It teases you, and you can't put it down.
Yeah.
You have to go to the next chapter, and you have to keep going.
Well, okay, I definitely want to learn more about your novel, Chasing Cleopatra, but you have an earlier book, Changing Shoes, which I think will also interest our community. Tell us about that.
Well, Changing Shoes, I use the soap. The whole point of it for me was how, as we age, can we age gracefully? So as a soap actress, I had all the tips. You know, you use an eyelash curler, which I didn't have time to do today, but you use an eyelash curler to make your eyelashes be longer, how you curl your hair. I mean, I use a lot of the wonderful soap opera tips, how you dress as you get older so that you have sleeves, you don't have to show your arms, all those little tips. But I also told very funny soap opera stories about what was going on the show in the dressing rooms and things. And I talked about how we took care of our mother and father as we got older, and how, you know, when they're getting in their late 80s and early 90s, how it does fall on you to do all the work and help them and get their legal affairs in order. And some people say to me they keep changing shoes next to their beds because they go to it when all of a sudden their mother doesn't know who they are, gets Alzheimer's. My mother, for instance, would say, "Who are you, dear?" I'd say, "Mother, it's Tina." And she'd go, "Oh, yes, Tina, the butler stole all the silver." And I'd go, "Mom, we don't have a butler and there's no silver." And she'd go, and then I realized that if I played along with her, she was so happy. So I'd say, "Oh, well, let's go look for it." And she'd say, "Yes." And so I told people this in the book. And when their mother got Alzheimer's or their father, they went back and read that and realized how to work with their parents.
I see. So it sounds like it's just a lot of good logical advice that maybe no one would have told you until after.
Nobody told me. No one.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what's so important. And that's a big thing, a big part of what Bloomer Boomer is about, is letting people know what it's like, because we don't have the role models, you might say, because maybe they've died off, and so this gives a good opportunity. And I read where you said changing shoes adds levity to the time of life when one can feel overlooked, and I have never heard it put that way, but it was really true to come up with that. You must be a good observer of people in life.
Well, you get diminished as you get older. There's no question about it. There's a story in Guiding Light where we have a Christmas party every year. And because I've been on the show for 20 years or something, I was always in the front row with Kim Zimmer and, Robert Newman, Josh and Reba. Because I'd been there and everyone knew me. But one day we came down for the Christmas show. I was behind this big white piano behind the Christmas tree. And I remember thinking, what's happened? Nobody cares about me anymore. I was probably getting close to my late 50s, early 60s. And it was devastating to me. And Peter Simon, who was on the show, they started diminishing him as well, and he left the show.
Well, what's your advice, if you will, or how did you learn to deal with that?
Oh, I did learn to deal with it. I went up to my dressing room. I'm putting in flowers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I like that.
I went up to my room and I cried. Of course I cried, and I ate M&Ms, which was everything I always liked to do. And then I wrote down all the pros and cons of being on this soap. And the cons were I'm being diminished. The young people are coming in and taking over. I mean, the young girls would come by and go, "Tina, do you like my sexy negligee? I'm falling in love with Billy. Tina, did you ever do love scenes when you were younger?" Yeah. And then they go, "Oh, I'm sure you did." And then they'd walk out and I'd go, "Oh, and I sort of got hurt and angry. And then I thought, that's just a waste of my time. So I began to befriend these younger girls who are following you and who are taking your job. And this is in real jobs too. Women are, as secretaries or nurses. I mean, I give talks all over the country about this. I was just over at Scripps Institute talking to the professors there, the lady scientists, and they see the young scientists coming along and becoming the important person in their laboratory. They know something more about the genes or the coronavirus, which is what they're working on. Or a secretary working in a group of secretaries in a big JP Morgan place. All of a sudden, these young girls are coming in and they're cute and, they cost less because it's been there a while, you cost more and more and more. So their jobs are they're being pushed aside. And this is an awful thing to happen to one. I mean, you want to stay in the game. And that book, Changing Shoes, helps you, I think, stay in the game. I think Chasing Cleopatra is just pure levity, and that I wrote it as I was older than I did Changing Shoes is very interesting to me. I really thought about that a lot, that I wrote Changing Shoes I tell people, for instance, I republished Changing Shoes recently because Penguin went out of business, and so I bought the rights to the book. And I added things where I was talking to people about power of attorneys and living wills. I have a whole chapter on what you need to do to be ready as you get older, and to do it when you're younger. Because when you're older, you're scared of dying. But if you've done it when you're younger, when you're not afraid of dying, it's far better. I go over it once every few years, and I realized that I hadn't mentioned you have to put your passwords in there, in with your will, so people can open your computer and open all your important documents.
Good points. Boy, that's in the first book, Changing Shoes.
No, it's in Changing Shoes. I republished Changing Shoes.
I see. Now, Chasing Cleopatra, tell us about that and how your life experiences perhaps influenced the story.
Well, they did.
Huh?
They did.
Yeah.
They did, because I'd run the Honolulu Marathon, and there's a little love thing going on as in the book we're running the marathon, and I'd climbed Kilimanjaro, and that's a very, very important part of this book, Chasing Cleopatra. I climbed it in Africa, all 19,700 feet, please. And to be honest with you, people have said to me who've read the book, what happened to you on Kilimanjaro? Well, nothing like that happened to me. I was the slowest person of all. I mean, I was a soap opera actress, and I climbed with the board of Outward Bound, and they were all eating trail mix, and they were all in beige, and I was in bright pink. But I climbed it, and I made it by very slowly making my way up. And I don't want to give the book away because the book is so full of surprises, but I use sort of a love story that could have happened on Guiding Light, or could have happened anywhere, where people meet and fall in love. And
well, I like to ask my guests, for a takeaway, and maybe your book Changing Shoes is a good place to start. What might that be? I mean, these are, obviously we would love for them to get your book and a new edition, but today, as we close out, what might be? I would say
you have to stay in the game, and you have to stay in the game by being techie, knowing how to do.
Good point.
I think that's really important. I mean, I hear people saying, "Oh, I don't know how to go to Netflix," and I think, these are people my age, and I think, how ridiculous. It isn't that difficult. You learn how to do these things. I think you stay in the game by being with younger people. That's one of the key elements, is having friends who are maybe 20 years younger, which I do. I have very good younger friends. And I go to lunch with them, and so I know what's going on in the world. And I even have friends who are half my age, the children of the friends of my son, who all just read my book and said they didn't even want to give their little kids a nighttime story because they wanted to get back to their book, which made me very happy. But Changing Shoes, I tell people how to stay in the game, I think.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I've heard people say, I'm 60, 70, 80 years old, but I still think like I'm 19, And
Yeah.
If you think about it, that's not such a big surprise.
No, and so you should stay active, and I think walking I mean, I've been mountain climbing, marathoning, doing a lot of exercise. First of all, you walk with a friend. So I think that's awfully nice. And if they're young, they're telling you about the movies they're seeing, about the bands that you don't know anything about. So you're learning about that. But I do think staying in the game is really what changed. That's my takeaway from Changing Shoes.
Tina Sloan, I thank you so much for your time and happy Valentine's.
And same to you. You'll notice I am all dressed like a Valentine.
I know you're perfect, and we also featured you on today's site with you and your husband. So
my husband doesn't look like that. That's a bad wig.
Oh, okay. Well, he looked good. He looked like you. Both of you looked very good. So
thank you very much.
Thanks
okay.
so much.
Thanks, Andy.
Our guest has been Tina Sloan. She's author of Chasing Cleopatra, a novel of love, betrayal, and suspense. It's available here at Bloomer Boomer and all the regular places. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.